How's everybody doing? This is an unexpected space. We've got some huge breaking news that is potentially going to be the end of Andrew Tate. We just found out through Mircea, who is a journalist in Romania who has been covering this case better than anyone else in this any other media outlet out there. He's a freelance journalist, works with all the major companies out there. He's got DCOT, which is the law enforcement agency in Romania that prosecutes drug trafficking, human trafficking, and terrorism. He has his sources there, and he's breaking the news today that Andrew Tate's 15-year-old victim, he saw the victim statement. He's got access to a document. He saw the victim statement, and part of that victim statement, I'm going to read it off here. It says, Andrew told me that when I go to DCOT, I should only say good things about him, just like Redacted did, which is one of the other victims. So she's alleging another victim was paid as well. For this, he offered to pay me the sum of 5,000 euros, but he only gave me the equivalent in British pounds, which was only 2,500 euros in cash. So Mr. Billionaire, Mr. Multimillionaire genius tried to bribe a 15-year-old victim that he's going to be charged with for sexual intercourse with a minor, 15-year-old minor, bribed her to say good things about him to DCOT and only paid her half of the money. Only paid her half of the money, and she turned on him. She turned on him. It's her official statement, and she's alleging that there are other girls who did it too. Yeah, this is huge. This is huge. I'm going to bring people up to speak. Let's talk about this. This is an unplanned space. Anybody, just raise your hand and come on up. We can talk about how stupid this guy is. Imagine trying to bribe a victim of an underage girl that you may have trafficked or you're going to go to court for. You're going to get charged for sexual intercourse with a 15-year-old girl. And by the way, minors cannot give consent. So that's rape. Just very clear on that. A minor cannot give consent. So that is rape. So it's very possible that he's going to get the charge of sexual intercourse with the minor and rape on top of that. All right, so we're bringing people up. Rules of engagement in my space. We don't yell over each other, and we got to keep things on topic. And for those of you who don't know the current situation of everything that's going on, their new allegations against them are forming an organized criminal group, which is organized crime, trafficking in minors. And the allegation there is that Andrew transported a foreign girl from another country to Romania, where he then allegedly forced her to work in pornography and webcam. And then sexual intercourse with a minor, that's the 15-year-old. That's the one that gave the statement that we got a little bit of information from that. Again, she says, Andrew told me that when I got to DCOT, I should say good things about him, just like X did, X being another victim. So I'm going to guess they paid a lot of these girls, and now they know. Now they know. For this, he offered to pay me the sum of 5,000 euros, but he only gave me the equivalent of British pounds, which was just 2,500 euros in cash. I can't even wrap my head around how stupid this guy is. He, if he would have paid her the full amount, Mr. Multi-millionaire, Mr. claiming to be a billionaire, wouldn't even pay her the full amount to lie to the police, and now he got caught. This is going to be the end of Andrew Tate. This is it. If he beats everything else, this is going to be the end of Andrew Tate. So that's going to be sexual intercourse with a minor. Then there's human trafficking. Now, the human trafficking in this second case, there are 34 human trafficking victims in the new case, and then one for sexual intercourse with a minor, being a total of 35 victims in the new case. That brings their total victim count between all of their cases to 49 victims between the two brothers in all the cases. They also have a new allegation for money laundering. They also have an allegation for influencing statements, and that ties into this right here. This is completely different, but it's an alignment. So he got caught on recorded jail calls trying to have two of their victims in their first case, trying to intimidate them into changing their statements with DCOT. And he's also going to be charged with bribery and corruption offenses because on those same recorded jail calls, he was caught trying to bribe two Romanian politicians. Yeah, these guys, they're in a world of hurt. They're in a world of hurt. And people always say, well, why don't you believe those two victims who came out and say that they're not victims? For shit just like this. This is exactly why. When you have law enforcement agencies that deal with human trafficking, they know exactly what the pimps and the traffickers do to their victims. And some of these victims, some of them are paid. Some of them are paid to say good things about the people who have abused them. Some of them have been threatened. Some of them have been blackmailed. Now, the two women in the last case who came out and said that we're not victims, they were caught giving false statements to DCOT. That's all documented. It's also documented that Tate had them transferred to Dubai after they gave those false statements to DCOT, where they remain today. They are still in Dubai under his control, according to the prosecutor. One of them has a huge Tate-owned tattoo down her arm. The other one has a Tate girl tattoo on her body. And there's evidence in the original indictment from testimony and statements from other people that say that those girls were blackmailed and threatened with violence. And now we just find out the 15-year-old minor spilled the beans on Andrew and says that he offered her 5,000 euros, but only paid her half. Michael, welcome up, man. First time up to the stage. How you doing?
Doing good, brother. How are you?
Good, good, good. Nice to get you on stage finally.
So, I'm fucking flabbergasted.
Now, imagine, I can't wrap my head around this. Okay, first of all, he got caught in his recorded jail calls originally, trying to intimidate victims into changing their testimony, trying to bribe local politicians. And those of us who saw some of these chat logs and we saw the charges that were coming, we were like, this guy's really stupid. And now to hear from a victim statement that she was offered 5,000 euros to lie for him, and then he only paid her half. So she turned on him and she was 15 years old. I'm sorry, but even this guy is the dumbest criminal I think we have seen in our lifetime. Like I can't even wrap my head around it. I can't wrap my head around it. And for those of you who are just joining us, because we just got a boost of people coming in right now. I posted this in my timeline. We did get some breaking news. This was an unplanned space. I just kind of went live because I kind of went nuts when I saw it because I can't believe that he actually did this. And it's a 15-year-old victim that he's going to be charged for sexual intercourse with a minor. She's 15 years old in the new case that's being built. And her statement reads, Andrew told me that when I got to DCOT, I should say good things about him, just like X did. I want to say X, that would be another victim that he would have paid as well. For this, he offered me the sum of 5,000 euros, but he only gave me the equivalent of British pounds, which was just 2,500 euros in cash. Now, this is coming from Mircea Barbu. I've linked to him. If you go look at my timeline and you find that post, I link out to his account. He is a journalist in Romania. He has been covering this case uh, very well. I mean, incredibly well. He's got DCOT sources, and DCOT is the law enforcement agency in Romania who handles human trafficking, drug trafficking, etc. They are the ones who are prosecuting him. So if he's posting about this, then you can count on it. And actually, I think we have some more. I'm going to read off some more of his tweets because I just looked at his account, and he's posted some more things. These are the first things that I'm reading, and I don't know if these are damning or if he's just sharing general information. So I'm just going to read through these. It says extract from another victim's statement. It says Andrew was the head and boss of the house. He coordinated the activities of Tristan Tate, and Andrew Tate was the one who coordinated the activities of Georgiana. And Georgiana Nagal was one of the associates that was charged as well. Georgiana, who was the personal assistant and who was a subordinate relationship to Andrew. Furthermore, he also bought me a mobile phone, telling me to take it with me. Oh, he bought me a mobile phone, telling me to take it with me to DCOT when I went to give statements and to leave my own phone at home. Oh my God. So he's doing this with all the girls. Georgiana had the role of coordinating the other people. Georgiana handled everyone's activities on the website. She managed the passwords and the accounts. Yeah. So go follow Mircea. He's going to be breaking all this information. Yeah. So apparently he's done this to a lot of the girls. This is absolutely wild. Michael, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, brother. So my question is, because I'm trying to stay at least somewhat logical, because I'm like, there's just no fucking way that he's this, like, no. I'm in shock and disbelief that someone would be that stupid.
Reckless? Yeah.
Reckless, stupid. It's just so dumb. Like, I don't even know where to start or quite how to articulate it. It's
right.
Absurd. It's absurd. That's probably the best way to articulate that I can come up with. So far, do we have the actual court documents on this? Because I'm gonna have to read this to believe it, because it is just that fucking stupid.
We will have them. So if Mirich is just now breaking it, I'm going to guess the chain here is going to go. He's got the document. He's going to send it to whatever media organization he's going to hand it over. Once they go through it, and they're finished with it, then we're going to have it. So we are going to have it, but it's a process. Yeah. He's not going to give it to us before he gives it to whoever he's working for. But all of these will be part of the case files. So if he's breaking something, if he's got a document from DCOT, it will be part of the case files. That's guaranteed. Everything he broke from the previous case and everything, all of that panned out. Solid, really solid stuff. It doesn't make sense though.
How?
I can't.
How?
Okay.
How?
And it's not even that he bribed her, which is within itself is just terrible. You know, it's a 15-year-old girl. But imagine you're already facing 20 years in a Romanian prison, and you know that they're going to bring this 15-year-old girl up in another charge for having sex with a minor, and then telling her you're going to pay her 5,000 euros, and then scamming her and only giving her half. Like, make that make sense to me. You're literally, his ass is on the line, and he couldn't help himself. He had to rip her off. He had to.
One thing to note as well.
Oh.
Notice how he paid her in cash, so that DICOT wouldn't actually have a transaction that they could verify too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, this is just it's beyond me. Right, keep up the good work, brother. Appreciate you. I've got to run up. But,
thanks, Michael. It's good to have you up here, man.
no, I
Real
appreciate
truth.
it, brother.
Yeah, real truth, man. Welcome up. How you doing?
Hey, good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. Wow, this is crazy news.
Only Andrew Tate could do something like this. This is the end of him. He's done. That's it. He's done.
Yeah, I agree. But what I find funny is that, like, imagine you're a Tate fanboy, typically a boy, not a man, and you're part of his cult, and you have to spend all day, like, you break a story, and you have to spend all day trying to refute it, trying to excuse it, attacking you as a pedophile, whatever they're doing to try to deflect. And it's like hours and hours and hours of work. Then they go to sleep. They're like, oh, we finally did it. They wake up in the morning, and every day there's something worse that they have to then start this whole process over, and it just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. At some point, what is their excuse going to be? Like, that's where I'm at this. I can't. It's amazing.
Yeah, the PR coming from the Tate camp the past couple of days have been hilarious. They've launched a huge campaign against all of us, trying to say that we're all pedophiles, and just absurdity. Absurd, as they do. They attack the messenger and try to discredit the messenger because they can't refute the actual things that we're sharing. So it's a tactic as old as time itself. But I just can't wrap my head around trying to bribe a 15-year-old girl that you got caught having sex with, and you couldn't even pay her the full amount of money. This guy tells the world that he's a billionaire, and he can't. And he ripped this. You know what it is? It's not that he doesn't have the money. It's that he can't help himself. He can't help not scamming people. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's part of his narcissism, I believe.
100%.
And so a lot of people say, well, this can't be the first time that this has happened. So this has to be a pattern, right? So there has to be other times where he's paid people off or tried to pay people off. There has to be other victims.
Go into the bedroom and join us.
And I don't know if you said this earlier, but for anyone trying to excuse and say, well, this was consensual. No. When you're 15, there's no consensual. That's rape.
Right. Hey, common sense. Mute your microphone, brother. If you're not speaking, you're making a ton of noise over there. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, a minor cannot give consent. We mentioned this a little bit earlier in the space. When you are having sexual intercourse with a minor, you're coming up on those charges like that. A minor doesn't give consent. It is rape. It is rape. So they just accused them and they rated them. They had this huge list of these are going to turn into charges. It's forming an organized criminal group. And that's essentially because 3 or more people conspired to commit a crime. They put together a method so they could exploit women. That's what that's about. Then they have trafficking minors. They have sexual intercourse with a minor, human trafficking, and that's 34 new victims of human trafficking. Then there's money laundering and influencing statements where they got caught trying to intimidate 2 of their victims into changing their story. And then bribery and corruption offenses. because they got caught trying to bribe local politicians. The influencing statements and bribery and corruption offenses, those are recorded in jail through wiretaps. So they've got his voice doing that. Now, these are all going to turn into formal charges when they're actually indicted. We went through all of this with the first case, right? They raided them, they made the accusations, and they had some time, and then they indicted them. So we're going to go through the same process with all of this, and I just can't wrap my head around it. And that's why I had this space. I wanted to process my thoughts in a space with a group of other people because I just couldn't believe how fucking stupid this guy is.
I got a question.
I feel more is coming. I feel more is coming. Sorry to cut you.
Oh,
Yeah, I feel like there's just going to be more because this is just like every day there's something new.
Well, we know that the two girls from the first case that came out and said that they're not victims, we do know that they were both blackmailed and they were threatened with violence. And the statement in the first case was that they were threatening one of the victims, saying that they were going to tell her parents that she was working on OnlyFans. So we've seen this stuff before, but I'm just amazed that he didn't even pay her the full amount if he offered to bribe her. I'm just dumbfounded. And now it looks like Mircha posted another one where it looks like, he's telling her to take a different phone. So she was obviously paid as well, too. Like it's over for these guys. It's done.
So we've got a 15-year-old who was bribed with $2,500, 2,500 pounds, correct?
Yeah, he told her it was going to be 5,000 euros, but he only gave her the equivalent of half.
Okay. So you know how our mind works. How did he pay her? Did he pay her by wire transfer out of country? Did he pay her cash, which means that he met with her? Did he, how was that payment made? Because if he wired funds out of country.
Cash.
Okay.
Her statement is that he gave her.
Did he give her the cash?
Yeah, let me read it.
Did he have a runner pay her the cash? See where I'm going with this?
Yeah, the statement says this, and I'm following you. He says, Andrew told me that when I got to DCOT, I should only say good things about him, just like X did. So X would be another girl that he would have done this with. For this, he offered to pay me the sum of 5,000 euros, but he only gave me the equivalent of British pounds, which was just 2,500 euros in cash. That's what we have. And we're going to get more. We're going to get the full statement. We're going to get that eventually. Right now, he's going to run that up, to the people that actually that he works for. But we'll get access to all of this eventually.
Yeah. All right.
Just like the last time.
Right. It's just unbelievable what keeps coming out of this. The decision from the court there today to not put them back in detention was another mind blower. Like, it would seem to me that before they could use the crimes in 2023 and 2024 as a breach of conditions, that they would have to have everything outlined rather than just kind of jump in at the time when they thought maybe that these crimes were happening, which is apparently what the court wanted them to do in order to enforce a breach of condition. But DICOT lined everything up properly and then went to the court and were told that they were late coming to the party, I guess. Is that pretty much how that gets interpreted?
We have some of the judicial decision. I haven't dug into it too deep, but I scanned it, and what I gathered is the argument was, okay, so first of all, it's getting really confusing now because there are two levels of a preventive measure happening at the same time. And a preventive measure, for those of you listening who don't understand what that is in Romania, it's kind of like bail. It's a system that Romania has to prevent someone from committing additional crimes, from destroying evidence, or from fleeing the country, tampering with evidence, intimidating victims and witnesses, etc. And it can come in different forms. It can be a preventive detention, which is what the Tates did the first time in the first case. They spent 3 months under preventive detention to stop them from fleeing, and so they wouldn't tamper with evidence while they were extracting all the data from their phones and their hard drives. And house arrest is also a preventive measure. And judicial control, that's what they've been under since they got out of house arrest, which is essentially like bail, but without the financial obligation. They've been on judicial control. Now, when these new allegations came and they were hit with these, Andrew was placed back on house arrest for 30 days, but they allowed Tristan to remain on judicial control. And it's due to the severity of the crimes because minors are involved. Now, this is going to be reviewed in 30 days. They might choose to keep him on house arrest for another 30 days. It will be reviewed every 30 days. Now, what happened today was a review of their preventive measure for the first case, and that one's getting reviewed every 60 days because they've already been indicted. So they had to figure out, what are we going to do with them now? And DCOT brought forward that since the criminal action had started against them in the last case, in early 2023, Andrew was caught trying to intimidate two victims into changing their statements. That was through the recorded jail calls. And then in 2024, they are alleging that they were trying to hide money and were money laundering by purchasing 4 luxury cars, putting them in other people's names where they were trying to hide money. So DCOT took this to the judge today as proof or as evidence in order to, at the very least, keep them where they are. Now, the judge did have a justifying ground. If you look at the law, the judge had justifying ground if they wanted to put them back in preventive detention. However, the judge said, and this is what I skimmed through, the judge said that since the prosecutor didn't request jail for them at the time of the offenses, so early 2023, and then in 2024, when they picked up on them doing money laundering, allegedly, because the prosecutor did not request jail at that time, then the judge today said that they can't justify putting them in jail now. I think that was, I mean, I don't 100% agree with that, but, letter of the law, spirit of the law. I can understand both sides. I mean, if you're getting caught bribing victims and minors, and like maybe you should spend a little bit of time in jail, but they were trying to put them in jail for an extended period of time. Real Truther, go ahead.
Yeah. So, what's your best guess as to how his legal team is going to deal with this? Do you think that this is going to be some kind of settlement in the end, or do you think they're going to fight it? And if so, because I feel like if they fight this, the only thing that they have in their arsenal will be to attack the credibility of the victims, and that could get really ugly and is concerning. But other than that, like, what else could they do?
Well, what we've seen up to this point, they went through a phase in the first case called the preliminary chamber. And that's where the judge is going to review all of the evidence to ensure that it was acquired legally and in accordance with Romanian law to approve that evidence for the trial. The preliminary chamber judge also hears all of the defense arguments, right? Why do you think this particular piece of evidence should be removed from the case? Why do you think this victim should be removed from the case? Why do you think we shouldn't go to trial, etc.? Why do you think this charge should be removed? So during this process, which took several months, it was a single judge. By the end of it, the judge ordered the trial, which the Tates appealed, and they're going to have an appeal decision on that in October. But the interesting part is this: the judge approved 100% of the evidence that was collected and rejected 100% of all of Tate's claims. I mean, just a slam dunk, just steamrolled over all of their claims and over all of the evidence that got approved to trial. So to answer your question, how are they going to fight this? We've seen through the preliminary chamber what a lot of their arguments were. And they were, instead of trying to actually go against the charges head to head, they were looking for procedural errors to get them out. I think that's their main defense on this, is they're looking for ways to get things dropped due to procedural errors. They were even looking for proof, and I understand this as well. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be done, but they wanted the serial number of the software that was used to extract the data. They wanted proof that everyone who extracted data off of the devices were properly trained in order to do that. So, I mean, they were just hitting every possible angle that they could, trying to find anything to get pieces removed. Essentially, there was even another argument that too much evidence had been collected against them, which is kind of mind-boggling if you think about it. So I think that's going to be their angle going forward, because the majority of the evidence the most damning evidence is coming from their devices. They extracted all the data from their computers and their phones. It's chat messages out of WhatsApp, group messages between the brothers and the enforcers. They took the data off of the victims' phones, off of the witnesses' phones. They've got financial transactions. They've pretty much got everything. So I think they're going to have to. The only defense is going to be, trying to find procedural errors and find little pockets
Wow.
to get in there. And yeah, I mean, these guys are in so much trouble.
If I was their lawyers, I would make sure I get full payment, not half.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, if you look at any pictures or any video them with their lawyers standing behind them, their lawyers are just ear to ear smiles. I can't even imagine how much money they're milking them for. Hey, Tristan, welcome up.
Hey, man. Hey, thanks for holding the space and tuning into a lot of these lately. And yeah, it's been really entertaining. Going back to the beginning, the sentiment of just incredulity at how brazen and ridiculous Tate is behaving. Although it's surprising, in a lot of ways, it totally fits with his MO, right? Like these arrogant actions where he seems to think he's invincible and can just weasel and snake and squirm his way out of anything through, fake charm, bribes, and, just basic petty criminal activity. It's kind of not that surprising when you see what he's done in the past, right? I mean, this is the guy who openly bragged about all the crimes that he's committed. Tristan Tate openly bragged when he turned 30 years old. He made that infamous tweet about, this is the first year that you can legally F 15-year-old girls. It's really in line with all their former behavior. And I think, agreeing with what I think was Michael that said earlier, I think we're going to see even more of these absolutely absurd actions come to light once these transcripts come out. I would love to see the transcripts of his phone conversations when he's in prison, because it almost seems to me like he's stupid enough to convince himself, oh, I'm in Romania. These people can't, they don't know what I'm saying because I'm speaking English or something. I don't know what his thought process is, but I can't wait to see the transcripts of his phone calls when he's trying to bribe politicians, prosecutors, and I'm sure he's got a lot of criminal activity that he engaged in when he was in prison and on his way to prison.
Yeah, eventually, and it might not happen until after the trial is over. Eventually, we'll get our hands on all of that stuff. We only have partial chat transcripts, and because during the indictment for the original case, which is after it's translated in English, is roughly, I think it's like 480 pages or so. And they'll summarize a victim statement, they'll summarize a witness statement, they'll put a couple of pages of chat conversations where it'll be very clearly show elements of human trafficking or criminality, or saying things. For example, one of the charges that Tristan has is instigating violence, because one of the chat messages that we've seen, one of the girls wanted to quit, and Tristan told Georgiana and Luana to hit her and throw her out of the house. And Georgiana took him up on it and beat her up. And she threw around the house. She choked her. She took her arm, lifted it above her head, ripped it up, tried to rip open the stitches on her new breast augmentation under her breast. And we've seen chat messages where Luana, the other accomplice, was telling Georgiana to beat her without leaving a mark. So, you have these sorts of chat messages that are summarized, in groups, and then they'll reference a larger volume in the case file. So their case files are 70 for the first case. There's 75 case files, and each case file has roughly 1,000 pages of it. And in the indictment, it tells you what's inside every single one of them. They meticulously detail what they put inside of every one of those case files. And I would say probably 80% of those case files is evidence against them, not in their favor. And the rest of it is going to be some witness statements in their favor. It's just going to be warrants, financial information that might help them out in some degree, but the most of it's against them. It's pretty damning.
Well, and just to add a couple other details, if I remember correctly, the breast implant that she tried to rip off, those were paid for by the Tates, who then used that to leverage debt, both emotional, psychological, and physical monetary debt, in order to force this girl to continue doing cam pornography work. And remember, these are also the guys who are supposedly being persecuted by the Matrix for promoting traditional family values. So yeah, no matter what anecdote we're going for, there seems to always be an infinite regress of just insane details that make it even more evil and cruel when considering these douchebags' actions.
Yeah, debt. What do they call it? Debt bondage, I believe is what they called it. So they would front girls money to do various surgeries and operations, breast augmentation, etc., and then create these situations where it was difficult to pay them back, and then they couldn't quit until they paid them back.
These guys critique, and I think maybe their critiques of the university system are valid for, you know, a lot of cases, but the debt that people will incur to get into a university, they're over there selling their stupid fake scam hustlers university and talking about how evil this indebting people and turning them into debt slaves is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they've been doing the same thing for years. So
Yeah.
just the hypocrisy, the projection, and the criminal and psychopathic mind state is consistently being demonstrated by these guys in all of their actions. And it's the most amazing thing to me is how the tater tots and these people who consider, who are supposed to be, you know, conservative value pundits online will defend these guys and parrot their lies. It's really shocking, more shocking than hearing the details of the retarded things that these guys are willing to do and think they'll get away with.
Yeah, I think a lot of their young fans, because you know, these guys come at me all day, and they parrot whatever he tells them. You know, whatever they say, he says online or in a video, whatever they say in the real world, or whatever it is that they say, they just parrot that stuff. They don't actually know. A lot of these kids they're young, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. They don't understand the legal process. They don't understand the high level of evidence that's required to actually charge someone with such a heinous crime like human trafficking. They don't understand that you don't go to court with zero evidence. You know, for you to go to court, to go to trial with human trafficking, it requires a substantial amount of evidence for that to actually happen. And the standard is quite high for that evidence. But they just parrot. They don't know. You know, oh, there's no evidence collected whatsoever. And if Tate tells them that there's no victims, and they believe there's no victims. For those of you who don't know, in the first case, there's 7 victims. And out of those 7 victims, 5 of those victims gave statements against the brothers. And the 2 who said they're not victims, the prosecutor has evidence that they were transported to Dubai by Tate, where they remain today. And they gave false statements to DCOT, which is the law enforcement agency that's prosecuting them in Romania. And they were blackmailed and threatened to work for them as well. So they're absolutely victims of human trafficking. And in the new case, there's 34 victims of human trafficking and 1 minor for sexual intercourse. And then within that 34 human trafficking number for victims, there's 1 minor. So there's a 17-year-old. They're saying that Andrew trafficked to work in pornography. And then the sexual intercourse with a minor is 15 years old. And for those of you just joining us, by the way, this is an unplanned space. A lot of this information was kind of breaking earlier when I just got excited and I hit the go live on the space to kind of work through my thoughts with a group of people. So I'm just going to read off a little bit of what we have here. So for the sexual intercourse of the minor, for Andrew, she's 15 years old. And the journalist who's been covering this since day one in Romania, his name is Mircea Barbu. I've got him linked as my source. You go follow him if you want to keep up with the case. Cases, he breaks this stuff really fast. He's seen the documents. He's seen a lot of these victim statements, and he said, and the quote here is, Andrew told me that when I go to DCOT, I should only say good things about him, just like X did, and X would be another victim. For this, he offered me the sum of 5,000 euros, but he only gave me the equivalent in British pounds, which was just 2,500 euros in cash. So not only did he try to bribe her, he only paid her half, and so she turned on him. I just, man, every time I say that, I just can't wrap my head around it. Real truther. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say I put that in the nest, your tweet,
Oh.
so people can look at it at the top. And also, you do seem to have a large group of tater tots in the room, but there's 108 anonymous listeners, which is like almost a third of the space.
Oh yeah, they're going to be in full meltdown mode right now. Absolute full meltdown mode. Okay, so we have David. You've been patient. Thank you. How you doing, David?
Good. How you doing? Yeah,
Great.
I liked what Tristan was saying there. I just want to say this. First of all, the conservative media is walking away from this guy because at first, since there's so much castigation, quote unquote, for being a conservative, there's a lot of suspicion around that. This guy doesn't. This guy deserves no credulity whatsoever, just by the words that he's said from his own mouth. And I just want to kind of defend the alpha males, because a lot of women sort of on the conservative side want quote unquote real men. They just don't want whiny beta men that try to pretend like that they're women in order to inveigle them into a relationship, which is kind of creepy and happens a lot on college campuses now. This guy is no alpha male.
Right.
This is what a real misogynist looks like, and it comes from a standpoint of weakness, and it's really, really loathsome. He talks of, let's just talk, even if you're a libertarian such as myself, and a lot of this stuff, in terms of consenting adults, not the children aspect of this, should be legal. All your work is ahead of you to defend this morally, because he talks about, this is the kind of guy who couldn't get a good, smart, beautiful woman if he tried, and certainly couldn't keep her, because what he does here is he talks about women in such an exploitative way, and he's proud of this. It doesn't matter whether he thinks he can get away with it or not. By his own words, by the way he treats women, real men don't exploit women, they defend them. The alpha male mentality is to look out for them. The alpha male mentality is not to be a part of their downfall. These are the same people that go to Thailand and hope that they can find a 15-year-old girl. What a loathsome, weak person that they would need to go halfway around the world to do something like this, rather than once again go find a beautiful woman that you can connect with on an ideal level and is sexy and hot and wants to stay with you. Just the reprehensible nature of the way this guy talks about women and how exploitative he is of them. I He has no association with any real alpha male out there or real men. And if when women get really sort of disaffected with men, especially kind of on the left, this is the kind of person that they think about. And so we should all really, in no uncertain terms, denounce people like this. It's just totally loathsome and reprehensible.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. They are not alpha males in any capacity. They might look like alpha males. They're built, they got muscles, they smoke cigars, they got the sports cars. They give this illusion that they're alpha males. But just like you said, real men protect women, real men protect children. Real men don't exploit people ever. That's
Right.
that's not what that's not what men do. And this is the message that I think these young men are getting from Andrew Tate. I mean, it's split. Some of these young men are like, hey, he inspired me to go to the gym or start a business. And I think that's great. I think that's great that you've picked up some positive influence from these guys. Do your thing. I'm not mad at you for that. I don't think
Hmm.
anybody is. But at the same time, there's a whole lot of boys out there, because I deal with them on a daily basis. They don't see any problem with what they're doing with these women. And though that there needs to be an example set. So I think when these guys are eventually convicted, that's an example that has to be set to teach these young men that this is not okay. This is not what men do.
Right. And just think about the young men that are feeling that way. These are also people that aren't being coached how to look women in the eye, your classmates, or maybe as you get a little older, people you're working with, and get to know them on a human level and find the love of your life. By the way, much more rewarding. That's what I found. I'm married,
Yep.
and have in your life. This is the way to live life really selfishly in a good way. If you're really selfish, then you'll figure out how to do these things. It takes more courage to go out and find the woman of your dreams, to go out and exploit the woman of your wet dreams.
And that's well said. Yeah, that's well said. I agree. I'm married as well. Um, it I can't even wrap my brain around. And I just want to make a clear distinction here, because I get asked this all the time. If you do it correctly, and I'm not talking about the morality of this, that's a whole nother conversation. But if you do it correctly and legally, webcamming and OnlyFans and pornography, even though you might disagree with it morally, in most countries it is legal if you do it a certain way. Where it becomes illegal is when you start manipulating people to work in those industries. If you're manipulating someone or coercing someone or deceiving someone or committing fraud, if you're doing any of these things to put them in a position of vulnerability, or where you're isolating them so that they have no choice but to work in that industry, that's what a lot of the charges involved with these guys. The allegations are that they would recruit women using social media apps and dating apps, and over a period of time build up false relationships with these women. The women would think that they're in a relationship, just like you would with an online relationship. The brothers, their entire intent for recruitment was so that they could eventually get them and exploit them in pornography. So they would build up this false relationship, earn their trust. After they earn their trust, they would meet them in person. Andrew says that they would then have sex with them and do what they would call the PhD test to make sure that they were quality. And if so, they would then talk them into traveling to Romania. And once they're in Romania, the most of the girls, not all, some of the girls, they had OnlyFans before, or may have worked on webcam, but that doesn't mean they can't be trafficked. There's a lot of misconception around that. But a lot of these women went there thinking they were actually going to be the girlfriends or the wives of the brothers. Then when they got there, surprise, you're put in a house full of other sex workers, and they start coercing you to work in pornography.
Which is odd.
So
That's oddly how the original porn industry used to work. OnlyFans, the idea
yeah,
of it, and I do support this, is that the woman at least can own her own content, which means if she ever just wants to take it all down and do something else with her life, the opportunity to avoid the sort of brutal exploitation is much better. So cutting him away from the herd, like they used to do in the old porn industry, like down in Miami, where they'd get them all to go down there, they put them all in a house. Obviously, people running the house are much older. So you're right. They're sort of mimicking the old porn industry by cutting them away from the herd at their most vulnerable and their most naive point in their life.
yeah, yeah. And it made them afraid to leave. And that's, people always love to say, well, that's, my employer did this to me. People love to justify, try to justify what human trafficking is. Well, my employer exploited me. The difference is, like, yeah, they might have taken advantage of you, but you weren't in a position, or at least I hope you weren't, where you feared for your life or you feared physical retribution if you quit that job. Or maybe you were not put in a position to where you didn't have anywhere else to go because they've isolated you and cut you off from your friends and family.
Well, I'll end with this. For all the guys out there, there are drop dead gorgeous, awesome, wonderful, but confident, little challenging women out there. And if you behave this way, you'll instinctively know that you don't deserve her, and you probably won't have the guts to go up and ask her out.
Yep. Love that. Thank you, David. For those of you just joining us, this is not going to be a long space. There's just breaking news that came out, and I wanted to cover it live. We found out through Mircea Barbu, who has been covering the case in Romania. He has DCOT contacts, and DCOT is a law enforcement agency in Romania for human trafficking, drug trafficking, and terrorism. If he's posting it and he's saying he has access to the documents, it will be part of the case files. We will get access to those documents as well, and we'll publish snippets of those. But the statement from the 15-year-old victim, where Andrew has been accused of sexual intercourse with a minor, and let's just call it what it is, minors can't give consent, so that is rape of a minor. And the statement of her, she says, this is part of the statement. She says, Andrew told me that when I got to DCOT, I should only say good things about him, just like X did. And X is one of the other victims that they did this with. For this, he offered to pay me the sum of 5,000 euros, but he only gave me the equivalent of British pounds, which was just over 2,500 euros in cash. That's from the 15-year-old girl. And as we said earlier, I struggle to wrap my head around being in this situation, knowing you're staring down, 10, 15, 20 years in a hellish prison in Romania, and you have the money, allegedly. You claim you're a millionaire, you claim that you're a billionaire sometimes, which is absolutely not true. But to offer to pay this girl $5,000 to protect you and then rip her off and only pay her half, I can't. That makes my head hurt just thinking about it. I struggle with that one. David, why do you think he would only pay her half and try to scam her out of that in that position? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know. You can't, if you're going to do these kinds of things, you can't cheap out when you're trying to get people to be complicit. But notice that it's the only way that he can try to get that support from someone who would be have no reason to be loyal to him. This he's not even running. He's not even being a good crime boss, because none of these
Yeah.
people have any reason to be loyal to him because he's so exploitative.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Real truther or common sense skeptic or Tristan, why do you guys think maybe he didn't pay her that second half or try to? I mean, his freedom is essentially hanging. I mean, there's 35 victims in this new case, 7 in the last one, and there's a case in the UK. And for those of you who don't know, before Real Truther or Tristan and Common Sense speak up, there's a first case in Romania with 7 victims of human trafficking. One of those victims is also alleging that he raped her. There's this second case that's coming together. There are 35 victims, 34 of them for human trafficking. One of them is sexual intercourse with a minor. The UK requested extradition, and they were granted extradition whenever Romania concludes their proceedings. So regardless of what happens in Romania, if they're acquitted on all charges, magically, they will be arrested again and extradited to the UK. Or if they're sentenced to prison in Romania, they will be arrested again and extradited to the UK as soon as their prison sentence ends. And that case in the UK is for additional human trafficking and rape. We know of at least 3 victims in that case. And there's a civil case against Andrew in the UK where 4 alleged victims are accusing Andrew specifically of rape and sexual assault.
So for the reason why he probably shortchanged her, I think there's 2 possibilities. Number one, he can't help himself because he has forever ripped these girls off. And number 2, he's short of money. Right, he's legitimately short of money and couldn't pull together the $5 grand. I think those are 2 very distinct possibilities. It's mind-blowing that he would even try something like this and think that he wouldn't get caught, to have it at such even a low dollar amount, thinking that $5,000 was going to buy her silence and then only give her half of it. I mean, it really does just show that this guy's totally freaking clueless and thinks he's God and is going to get away with all this, and we just can't let that happen.
Yeah, well, they're not. They caught him.
Yeah.
They caught him. I mean, they already had evidence of the first 2 girls who came forward, the first 2 victims who came forward and said that they weren't victims. They have very clear evidence in the indictment that they were blackmailed, they were threatened with violence, they were transported to Dubai by Tate's people, where they remain today, according to the prosecutor. So they already had the information on the 2, and 5 of the 7 victims already given statements against them. So now we have 35 new victims in the second case, and we're already hearing about the 15-year-old being bribed. And she references another girl who'd been through the same thing. And Mircea, the journalist who broke this, he has another partial, just a snippet of a statement, where Andrew bought another one of the victims a different phone and told her to take that phone to DCOT because he knew they were going to extract the data off of her phone like they do with all the girls. So yeah, he's trying to cover his tracks, but the entire time, through the entire process, DCOT has been 1,000 steps ahead of him. This is what these guys do for a living. Like, this is their job.
They deal with human
Hey,
traffickers
Crayon?
all the time. They've heard all the stories. They know how the victims get manipulated. They know how witnesses get bought off. And going back to the first case with J and B, these 2 girls who are listed as victims, who say they're not victims. The reason why they are still listed as victims is because the court, or DICOT, has determined through their false testimony that they have been brainwashed, manipulated. Like, they couldn't give straight stories that corroborated each other's story because everybody was lying. So that's why they're still
Right.
listed as victims, as being under the influence, and certainly being in Dubai under the Tate control. That only further exacerbates that claim, right? So
Amen.
for him to think, after going through all that in the first case, that any of these tactics were going to work in the second case, again, just shows his disconnect from reality.
That disconnect comes from a lack of empathy. When you have a lack of empathy, you look kind of dumb. Because you're unable to get that the argument that you're making just isn't going to fly. It's not even going to get off the ground. I do want to make a point, though, Crayons. If I really also don't want to, like, anybody that knows anybody that does OnlyFans, or some woman is associated with it or does it themselves, we want those people to be safe. And I would love to hear women that know about this, are more educated about it, maybe do OnlyFans. We want them to be disassociated with guys like this. The whole idea is that they own their own content, they don't get exploited. So I would love for any of them to step up right now and talk about this. Totally interested in what they have to say.
Yeah, for those of you just joining us, the new allegations against the brothers, this is on top of the first case, is for forming an organized criminal group, trafficking in minors. And trafficking in minor is specifically for a 17-year-old girl, where DCOT says that they have evidence that she's a foreigner, she's not Romanian. She was transported to Romania, where she was forced to make pornography for Andrew Tate. They know how much money she made, which means that the webcam company that she worked with is also cooperating with them. And we saw this with OnlyFans, who was also cooperating with DCOT. And there's a lot of people in line waiting to come up. we're not going to get to everybody today. This was a unplanned space. The news was just breaking about the 15-year-old statement where Andrew offered to pay her 5,000 euros to lie on his behalf with Decot, and then he only paid her half. And I just can't wrap. Every time I just say that out loud, it doesn't make sense. Gracie?
Yeah, hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Yeah, so you're calling for an OnlyFans creator. I am one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I am actually have, you know, I'm really against Andrew Tate, and I'm still like into this like OnlyFans thing. Um, so for me, I think it's all about like consent, and you know, it's very important if a girl actually does this on her own accord and not from like manipulation or like violence, and like people hitting somebody, that's like ridiculous to me. So yeah, I think like for me, I think that there's a lot of stigma from this industry because of people like that, like Andrew Tate.
Well, that's great to hear. I absolutely, that was kind of where I thought we were all going,
Hmm.
is how any human being can interact with other people without the exploitative aspect of it, and that means them having autonomy and control over their own content and what they're doing, and they're safe, and all of the rest is okay. It's just something that we have to work out together.
Gracie, as an OnlyFans creator, obviously, I hope you're doing all of this, you know, not under the same conditions that Andrew Tate's girls are. But one of the things that Tate did and Tristan did and Georgiana and Luana allegedly was they did not give the girls access to their own accounts. They didn't give them the passwords. The girls couldn't see how much money they were making. They would just get paid. Well, some of them gave all the money. Some of them gave all the money to the brothers. But the ones that were paid, they didn't know how much money they were actually making. They didn't have access to the accounts. What are your thoughts about that? Like working and doing that sort of job and then not even being able to see how much money you're making or even have access to your account. Ha-
I
That's
think that
crazy.
I think that's like extra traumatizing, and that's why I'm actually making a lot of noise on my Twitter, sharing it, even though like it's probably like turning off a lot of my audiences, but I don't really care right now because I just feel like if I were in the girl's shoes, I would want like some other girls or like just anyone else picking up for me and sharing this. So yeah, that's why I'm like sharing it right now. I think it's extra traumatizing, and I feel like mm, sometimes the victims might take years to process actually what's going on before they realize that they are real victims. You know.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you mentioned consent a little bit earlier, and this is an argument that I see over and over and over with a lot of Tate fans and people who just don't understand what human trafficking is. And they say, well, the girls consented. They eventually consented, so it's not a problem. Here's the thing with that. Human trafficking law states that you cannot consent to be exploited. You can't consent to be trafficked. So if you are in a position where you have been deceived or coerced or threatened or forced in any capacity or manipulated in any way into that position for someone to actually gain your consent, then that consent is legally void. So there is no consent when it comes to human trafficking. If you were put in that position by force, fraud, deception, threats of violence, etc., there there is no consent legally speaking. It doesn't exist. So even though they eventually got these women to consent, it's not legally valid for their consent.
Hey, Gracie, I have a question for you. Aren't these don't these women need to understand, even I'm talking about adult women, that they don't need to be associated with a man in order to create an OnlyFans account and be safe in their own home and own their own content?
Like those women, I feel like in the first place, from what I'm reading out on like OnlyFans, I don't think they even plan out to be on OnlyFans. It wasn't even part of their plan. They're part of it seems like they didn't even they didn't even know about OnlyFans until they fell in love with Tate. They move into Romania, and then Tate start coercing them and like pressuring them when they are there. So I feel like they didn't even have any time to do any research.
Wow,
Like
that's
they
really
don't,
interesting.
yeah,
Well, the
right.
Tates
If
used
I'm not wrong,
TikTok
okay, I
to loosen these
like
girls up, hey, in front of the camera. That was kind of their whole playbook. Was they get them to Romania, then they put them in the house with the girls that were on cam, and to get the new girls comfortable on cam, they do it on TikTok, where they were just dancing around or doing stuff that started off more and more innocent. And then when they got to 1,000 followers, then they would move them over to an OnlyFans, but they wouldn't even tell the girls that they were on OnlyFans. Like
Some of
Tristan
them.
and
Some of
Andrew,
them. Yeah, some of them.
some of
Yeah.
them, yeah, some of them weren't
So,
even aware that their content was being sold on OnlyFans for money.
so basically, Common, it was like a grooming environment.
It was a
Yes.
3-step process. And it's
Yeah.
the same thing with the boys, right? On the other side, to get the boys, you have your friend referring a friend to the real world, right? And then after paying that $50 a month for so long, if you wanted to step up, then you buy into the war room, right? So again, it's a 3-part process where he's taking full advantage of these people, and now it's across both sexes. So
Yeah, and I like Gracie's point that they're taking advantage of people who really don't do their own research. Young women that wouldn't have to go anywhere. They could open up their own account, own their own content, and thus have autonomy and control over their own bodies.
There was one particular victim, and we see in the chat messages in the first indictment, loads and loads of chat messages with this particular victim. After she agreed to come to Romania, he'd met with her, had sex with her, did the whole thing, and earned her trust. And she was looking around on YouTube and came across some of his YouTube videos. And she confronts him and she says, "Hey, what are these videos? I see like these pimp and hoe videos. What are these all about? Am I just one of these girls, or what are you doing?" And then he should have cut it out right there. That should have been the end of it. But instead, he continued to deceive her and said, "Oh no, that's just entertainment. I make these videos to get attention, etc. And I try to sell these courses to." He called the guys who buy his courses, he called them losers, to this victim. He says he just sells these guys courses and he doesn't really do that. And it's all make believe, it's all entertainment. Earns her trust back. He earned her trust back, and he's telling her that he loves her and all this stuff. She gets to Romania, gets picked up by his assistant, and taken straight to the house with all of the girls working on OnlyFans and with webcam.
And to be honest, I feel like as a girl, especially at that age, I mean, they are like really, really young. Like imagine when you are at that age and somebody tell you something, like you're not in the position to know, or like to know what you're doing. You just trust somebody that is older, like an adult, who has a car, who owns a car, who owns a house. He is in a position to like tell them what to do. And I mean, what were you doing when you're 18 or like 15?
Right?
You just trust somebody who's like an adult. I feel like it's very, very manipulative.
yeah, by
Well,
the
and it's
time Gio has picked them up from the airport, because this particular victim wasn't even picked up by Andrew. She was told that Andrew was out of country and that this victim had to go with Gio to this other house. But where they live, it's at the end of a dead end, a one-way. Like there's only one way in and out of this entire complex. Whether you're talking the American Village or the Tate compound, it's the same road. There's one way in and out. It's surrounded by swamp. It's down the road from the cemetery. Like, and she's in this city where she doesn't know anybody and doesn't know the layout, nothing. Right. So she's in the middle of butt fuck nowhere, and being told that she's got to stay in this house. She doesn't even have keys to get out of the house. The house is locked up on her, and it's patrolled by security guards. Right. So once she's in Romania, that's it. Right. And if not for the American victim, that girl would still be there being raped into compliance, because that same victim is the person that Andrew is charged with raping in continuous form.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen some of the chat messages that the Romanian press, and we've got Real Truther, I'm going to get to in a second. We've got Paxwax, who is a Romanian. Maybe he can give us some insight on, because the Romanian press operates a little bit different in some of the other press that you might be coming from. They leak stuff all the time. The prosecutor will put stuff out, the press will run with it. And they've already started putting some of these chat messages out, some snippets of the chat messages. And
Hey,
there was one. Yeah,
Chris,
go ahead.
sorry, I got to run. I just wanted to shout out to Pax because he's doing great work. But just so you know, Will, who's on the case, he hasn't connected Pax Wax to the pedo ring yet.
Oh,
So
Good.
he just says he's been actively altering and mistranslating Romanian court documents in English to make the Tate brothers look bad. He then gives them to Crayon the pedo, which is, I guess, you, and uses them to push the false narrative. So that's what.
Oh my God. Yeah. We'll pull holes as a special one. Or
Yeah.
I'm gonna buy him some clown shoes and send it to him for Christmas this year.
But anyway, great space. I got to
So-
run, but thanks so much.
Cheers, man. Yeah, cheers. So we have one of the chat snippets that the Romanian press have already put out, and this is a conversation between Tristan Tate and Georgiana, one of their accomplices who was also charged. And it says, and this is basically showing how they just don't care about the girls that are with them. Georgiana says, Adriana is very sick. She's going to be in the hospital, or she's going to the hospital because the antibiotics aren't working. Tristan Tate says, I hope she dies. Georgiana says, I don't because I want money. Tristan says, haha, yeah, that's right. We need her to work well. Georgiana says, anyway, we know she's an idiot. At least now she'll see that she's a nobody without me online. Tristan says, she's finished without you. And my name, or she's finished without you, and she has my name tattooed on her. To hell with her. Georgiana laughs. Tristan says, she's going to have a miserable life. No matter how little she talks to me, I can ruin her life. So we're seeing chats like this coming out where he's having these conversations with the enforcers. I mean, you don't, even as a joke, you don't wish people die.
Oh,
Like that shows the character of the person. And there's another chat message that I haven't published it yet because it's a brief conversation and I'm trying to get more context, but it looks like by reading the snippet in the context is that they were impregnating some of these girls to trap them. That's the way it reads. And before I publish that, I want to make sure that is the context of it. And that's dark. That's really dark if it's true.
Well, that's what he threatened that victim, the rape victim, with, right? That if she didn't,
impregnation.
Yeah. Incarceration.
He threatened to rape her. Yeah. He threatened to rape her, get her pregnant, and lock her in a house. We saw that in the chat messages. His words directly in a chat message that he was going to rape her, get her pregnant, and lock her in a house. Paxwax, thanks for being patient, brother. Maybe you got some clarity to add to all of this.
I wanted to ask Claire some things about the so-called OnlyFans managers, but I came a little bit too late. Talking about those leaks. Yes, indeed, during the investigation phase and during the preliminary chamber phase, and even after during the trial, the case file is not public. But when the prosecutor is going in front of the judge to argue for his request, like detention, he has to bring some evidence to put on the table on the front of the judge, and that evidence which is brought in the front of the judge, it will be quoted in the court documents, and those court documents are public. So this is how those transcripts are coming out. Not that the journalists have direct access to the case file. They have access to the court documents, and those court documents have those codes used by the prosecutor to argue his request in front of the judge.
Thank you. I want to read a comment. Somebody retweeted my tweet, and I'm not even going to allow them to speak. So you can leave the space because this is disgusting, and we don't victim blame here. But I'm going to read this so everybody can understand the level of where the mindset of some of these Tate fans are. This is about a 15-year-old child. 15-year-old child, and the charge is going to be sexual intercourse with a minor. This person says she accepted the bribe, period. She's not a kid anymore. She had her period, right? Natural law states that a woman is ready to reproduce when she has her period. She made a choice. She has the right to make that choice. You do not get to tell her who she can or cannot sleep with. That's the mindset of some of these people who are following Andrew Tate. These are broken human beings. And thankfully, we have laws in place all over the world. Thankfully, we have laws in place all over the world. And people like you who believe in stuff like this, prisons are full of people like Andrew Tate and people who think in this way. We don't victim blame here, so I'm just going to remove this.
Yeah, that was
person
pretty.
out
That
of here.
was that was pretty awful. I hope that person never has kids.
Yeah, a minor cannot give consent. We don't live in the Stone Ages anymore.
And I also do want to point out that I live with a doctor of chemistry, and the frontal lobe of the brain really isn't fully developed until 25. So it's very generous that we set the bar for what is a minor so low, because it takes a long time
Yeah.
for a person. And that's why the woman who does OnlyFans, who I'm really grateful for her coming up and talking, she made a really good point that these people, they don't really know. They see someone, an adult. I mean, just imagine imagine how dumb you or I was when we were 15. And
Oh, I was so stupid. I was so
right,
stupid.
right. And
Yeah.
you didn't, and what you lack is context, because that's how the consciousness develops. It's kind of my end of epistemology, is my work every day. And how consciousness develops is you make connections. That's called concatenation. And so your self-esteem isn't very high, your confidence isn't very high when you're very young, and these people are coming from a position of vulnerability and perhaps not the strongest backgrounds. And everything she said about the way they might comport themselves when they're inveigled by all of this, the cars and the house, and trusting an adult who seems persuasive and somewhat charismatic. We're supposed to care about people, that what they're really doing is they're trusting someone. And what a betrayal of that trust to treat them in this exploitative way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they have additional laws into this. So if you're taking advantage of someone's vulnerability or you're abusing your power over that person, those those are written into laws. Like that sort of thing is written into law that adds, weight to those charges. And that's part of these allegations is, abusing your power over this person. At that time, he's already a little bit known. He's a professional kick fighter. He's on social media. He's abusing his power and taking advantage of the vulnerability. Yeah, it just makes me sick even thinking about that person's post. It's well, she's had her period, then it's hers to say. Yeah, that's thankfully we don't operate that way
Yes,
anymore.
and this just after RFK's speech about the idea that this is happening for young girls, as far as them reaching puberty at the youngest age in our continent than any continent in history. Like now, it's sometimes 10 years old. Like, think about what this person is saying.
Right. Yeah. Just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. Okay, listen, I didn't plan on having this space. I just kind of as an impulse thing, I wanted to go live and just briefly talk about this to get more eyes on it. We do know now that there is a 15-year-old victim of Andrew Tate. This is going to be in the charge of sexual intercourse with a minor. We know through Mircea Barbu, who is a Romanian journalist who's been covering this in Romania. He's got access to DCOT, and he's got some of the victims' statements, and he started posting about some of them. And one of them, particularly, I'm going to read this again. It says, Andrew told me that when I got to DCOT, I should only say good things about him, just like X did. And X would be another victim who did the same thing. For this, he offered me the sum of 5,000 euros, but he only gave me the equivalent of British pounds, which was just 2,500 euros in cash. There is some more to that statement. I'll be adding on to that post a little bit later. But that's her statement. And if they've got the chats that have also come off of their phones, and they can, I mean, he's done. This is it. This is going to be the end of Andrew Tate. It might take him years to get a final conviction because in Romania, they get a chance to appeal 2 times. So if they get convicted, they have 2 different court of appeals that they can go to, 2 different higher levels of appeal, and it can take a couple of years to get to that point. But yeah, this is officially the end of Andrew Tate. So if you're a fan, I've got bad news for you. Top G is going to go to prison. So get your coping support network together now. Top G is going to go to prison. And thank you for everybody coming up. We'll have another space on this once we have some more breaking news or once we get our hands on some of these more statements, and maybe we'll read through detailed statements as we get them. But this is breaking news, so I just kind of went live and went for it. So thank you. Thanks for the shares. Make sure you follow the speakers up here, Murder, that's myself, Common Sense and Pax Wax. They've been covering the case as well. So thanks again. We'll have another space soon. Have a great one.